Thank you. I think we are already running very late. So I will leave the introduction part. I will directly come to the democratic institutions which were established in Afghanistan within these last 20 years in Afghanistan. So the basic thing that how these institutions were established and what were the base for these institute, that was the Bonn Conference. The UN-sponsored Bonn Conference, which was held in Bonn, city of Germany in 2001, the participants signed an agreement in that time. The aim was to recreate the Islamic State of Afghanistan following the US invasion of Afghanistan that followed the 9/11 terrorist attack on, and the Bonn Agreement established the political foundations of the Afghan Republic, reinstating the 1964 Constitution as the interim basic law, and it was decided to establish an interim administration in Afghanistan by selecting Mr. Hamid Karzai, the former president of Afghanistan, as the interim political leader of that administration. The Bonn Agreement laid the foundation of the US and NATO-backed state-building efforts in Afghanistan. The agreement sought to establish a new constitution, an independent judiciary, free and fair elections, a centralized security sector, the protection of rights of women and minorities in Afghanistan. The first step was the interim Loy Jirga. The term Loy Jirga means a grand council in the Afghan local language, is a mass national gathering that brings together representatives from various ethnic, religious, and tribal communities in Afghanistan. Historically, it has been used to approve a new constitution, declare war, choose a new king, or make sweeping social or political reforms. The interim Loy Jirga, an emergency Loy Jirga, was held in Kabul, Afghanistan between 11 and 19 June 2002 to elect a transitional administration. The Loy Jirga was called for by the Bonn Agreement. Again, Mr. Hamid Karzai, the head of the interim administration, was chosen as the president of the administration with an overwhelming majority of 83% and stayed as a president for that term. Okay, the second Loy Jirga was for the new constitution, and it was held in 2003 and 2004. The constitution of the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan was agreed upon by more than 500 delegates representing Afghan men and women from across the country at the Constitution Loy Jirga, January 4, 2004. The constitution was formally ratified by former President Hamid Karzai at the ceremony in Kabul on January 26, 2004, and described as a positive step toward democracy. The other institution which I want to name is the presence of the United Nations in Afghanistan. The United Nations Assistance Mission in Afghanistan, UNAMA, is a UN special political mission tasked with assisting the people of Afghanistan. UNAMA's office in Afghanistan was established on 28 March 2002 by the United Nations Security Council Resolution 1401. The main responsibilities of the office were for supporting political outreach, conflict resolution, and regional cooperation, and focusing on development and humanitarian assistance. The other institution was DDR or DIAC. As you all know that Afghanistan suffered a long time of war and fight. So after the Taliban regime was gone from Afghanistan, so there were lots of militias with armed militias. So under the Bonn Agreement, the aim was to transfer the power of all Mujahideen Afghan armed forces and armed groups in the country and bring them under the command and control of the interim authority and be recognized according to the requirement of the new Afghan security and armed forces. In 2003, the United Nations Development Program, UNDP, initiated the Afghan New Beginning Program, which lasted until March 2011. The program was to support Afghan government in disarming, demobilization, and reintegration of the former armed forces. The United Nations Assistance Mission in Afghanistan, UNAMA, managed and implemented the program with the help of International Security Assistance Forces, ISAF. And also the government of Afghanistan established a demobilization and reintegration commission within the government to coordinate the process. The other step was establishing a parliament in Afghanistan. On 18 September 2005, the first parliamentary elections since 1988 were held for the 249 members House of Representatives, that's called Wulisi Jarga in the local language, the lower house of the Afghan National Assembly. A total of 68 seats in the House were reserved for the women and 10 were filled by the representatives of Kochi Nuance. The election aimed to establish a fully representative government under the United Nations mediated Bonn Agreement of December 2001. Parliament was composed of the two houses, Wulisi Jarga, the House of People or lower house, and Mishrana Jarga, the House of Elders or upper house. Civil society. During the last 2 decades, keeping in mind the social, cultural, and political condition, along with the increasing desire of democracy in Afghanistan and with the development of democratic institutions and the process of globalization, it has helped to develop a new generation of social organization and civil societies, both within Afghanistan and in diaspora communities abroad. Semi-political movements as well as social and community self-organized, including non-governmental organizations, have been created. The other institution which was established was the Provincial Councils. The Provincial Councils were first time elected in 2005 and served in Afghanistan's 34 provinces. They were only democratically elected government bodies that interact with the citizens at the local level, ranging from 9 to 29 members in each province, depending on the province population. The law spells out 14 duties for these councils, but the primary responsibilities were to ensure citizens' views are reflected in provincial development planning, monitor and evaluate development programs in province, and manage conflicts among tribes, villages, and districts. Other step was Human Rights Commission. The commission was established on the basis of the degree of the head of the interim administration on June 6, 2002, pursuant to the Bonn Agreement. United Nations General Assembly Resolution 48 of 1993, endorsing the Paris Principle on National Human Rights Institution. The commission was the National Human Rights Institution of Afghanistan dedicated to promoting, protecting, and monitoring of human rights and the investigation of human rights abuses. Two other institutions which were related to the elections. Independent Election Commission was established. The Independent Election Commission of Afghanistan was the National Electoral Commission, which was responsible for administrating and supervising election and referenda under the Constitution of Afghanistan. The commission was established in 2006. Independent Electoral Complaints Commission. The Independent Electoral Complaints Commission was responsible to ensure justice and transparency during the election and enforcing voters' rights according to the Afghan law. Access to Information Commission. This was another institute which was established during the last 20 years. The Access to Information Commission was mostly involved in organization building, strategic relation, and public outreach. The commission was established in January 2019. Anti-Corruption High Commission. The High-Level Anti-Corruption Commission, established in 2010 by the Supreme Degree of the President and enacted in January 2013 by law, seeks to combine efforts, coordinate actions, and propose medium and long-term policies geared toward the preventing and fighting against corruption. Independent Commission on Supervision of Constitution Implementation. This commission was established based on the article of 157 of the Constitutional Law of Afghanistan in 2010. The authority of this commission was based on the Article 8 of the law, and that was to supervise the observance and application of the Constitution by President, Government, National Assembly, and other state and non-state organizations, provide legal advices on the constitutional matters to the President and National Assembly, make suggestions to the President and legislators on law that, according to the Constitution, would be needed, and finally, report the President any violation of the Constitution. So now I would request my colleague and friend Parwiz to continue the remaining part of the presentation, the challenges and the future of these institutions. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, honorable guests and all participants. I just continue with what my friend Naimat started. The reason we listed all those institutions at the beginning was what we think that establishment of all those institutions was an achievement for Afghanistan at that stage, that in 2001 that there was a new interim government in Afghanistan, because just before that we were in a civil war. A terrorist group was ruling the country, and actually or practically we did not have any government in Afghanistan. Therefore, establishment of all those institutions that were explained by my friend can be an achievement for Afghanistan, or we can say with the presence of international community, it was something that worked. It means something we had in Afghanistan after a long time, after a long civil war. Now I go to the challenges that why these institutions did not work in Afghanistan, what was the problems, or what practically what was the challenges. During elections, as Jalali Sahib also mentioned, that practically we had the election, that's true. We had the institutions to conduct the election, but the process of election was influenced by like political parties, or we can say the warlords or the local leaders who were very influential in each area of Afghanistan, in each part of the country. This was very much influenced. That's why the result of the election was not what the people of Afghanistan were expecting. The other thing was too dependent to foreign aid. For example, for a country like Afghanistan, which is a very poor country, spending $100 million for an election was too much. It means it was not sustainable. That's fine. For a period, for once, twice, or maybe 3 times, international community was there to support, to fund the process. But how long? If one day the international community was leaving Afghanistan, what will happen? Still, are we able to keep these institutions with this amount of expenditure, or with this much of dependence to foreign aid? Of course, this was a challenge. That's why each time the election of Afghanistan was seen as a project. Like once it happened with $100 million, the next time everyone was looking for funds from outside to conduct the next election. It means it was just kind of, as I said, like a project, rather than a sustainable strategic approach for democracy for Afghanistan. Public perception from the democracy, of course, people of Afghanistan, I believe that people of Afghanistan do want democracy. They do want election. They do want a government elected by themselves. But the only issue was that democracy was not translated in the context of Afghanistan. The word came just like a Western value, and it's usually the human nature that when you see something is imposed on you, you react on that. if we were supposed to say to the people that this is the government of the people of Afghanistan, it's not that, it doesn't mean that Western countries are coming to impose something on you. We could translate the word directly to the language of Afghanistan. That was, in my opinion, maybe more successful process. Cultural and ethnic diversity, ethnic influences. I said at the beginning also, Afghanistan is a very diverse country. We have different ethnicities, we have different, even cultural difference. Each part of the country is different from other. We cannot say that we have one whole culture in Afghanistan. As we also study in our in ICD, that if we zoom into in Afghanistan, we see different cultures and traditions within the country, which is very beautiful. Like in winter, from north of Afghanistan, you can go to the south. The weather is different, the culture is different. You see something new. From the south, people can come to the north. They see something different food, different traditions. That's very beautiful. And this caused that certain leaders, local leaders, influenced the process, and they could kind of insert it to the mind of the people that we are from this ethnicity or from this tribe. We are the only one who can help you, who can do things good for you. And they observed the votes of the people during the election. Poor representation by political parties. Actually, we did not have like that political party in real meaning that we should say that we had political parties. It was more like, as I said, local powers, ethnic groups leading a group of people in Afghanistan and influence the public opinion and overall influence the election. Fund-driven civil society organizations, that's what I was also listed by my colleague. We did have civil society organizations in Afghanistan. We had a lot of networks. I was working with the United Nations, and one of my jobs was to work with civil society organizations to establish networks for empowering the civil society networks. But the problem with civil society was that they were always having funds from international community to implement projects. As soon as we witnessed this, as soon as these organizations didn't have funds, it didn't exist. It was like one-person organization. When there was a fund, the whole organization was working, and when there was no fund, no organization, nothing exists. That's why it was it was not sustainable process. And regarding the civil society organizations, it was also kind of very modern expression coming from, in public perception, coming from outside, and mainly it was in the cities. One of the problems in Afghanistan that we have huge gap between the cities and the remote areas or the villages. So what was happening in the city actually was not, people in the villages were not feeling really what's happening in the cities. Anything happening in the city was kind of something imposed by Westerns, a Western value, not what the local tradition is, while it was not the case. We already had civil society organizations in Afghanistan. We have local shuras, we have local councils. Even people gather in a mosque and select a group of people. They do it. But the context or the expression used for this organization was different. That's why people was kind of, confused. We once, like 100 years ago, our late king Amanullah also started a huge reform. He really wanted to change the country, but the problem was that he was very fast. Like I just give you an example. Like if we are here, we are staying in this room. Everything is fine. We have food. We have water. and we are in peace. But the king was like in Holzhauser Straße, close to the U-Bahn, and he was asking the people to come to me. But the people were confused what to do, whether to go there or not. If the people were going there was a fast train that could lead to the center of the city, and they could reach a much better situation if they heard what he wanted. And instead they reacted that we don't know, because they didn't even know this. We don't know what's happening outside this building, and then the main road, and then till the U-Bahn, what's happening. This was also the same thing happened in Afghanistan between 2001 and 2021, that there was a huge gap between cities and the village level. Because we had all these problems in elections, like fraud or local influences, not a good result from the election. The trend of public participation in the election was declining every day, and I will show later in a graph how it was going down, because people did not see what they were expecting from the election, so they were disappointed and they started not to participate to the election, and as they were also seeing it as like a project. Conflict of interest among neighboring and regional countries in Afghanistan, that was of course the one of the huge challenges. Still is going on. Still we are suffering from this. Unfortunately, our location is it's good and it's bad. We are in a good location, but at the same time we are in a bad location, that we have different interests in this country, and everyone has the interests are against each other. If it's like all agree on something, of course we will be in peace. Otherwise, if like conflict between India and Pakistan in Afghanistan, conflict between Iran and Saudi Arabia in Afghanistan, conflict between US and Russia in Afghanistan, like many of these.
We are the battleground.
We are the buffer zone. I already explained about democracy word, which was new for Afghanistan, the expression of democracy. And conservative society, of course, we have very restricted traditions, and we have restricted society. We should accept this, that we need a very strategic plan with a slow motion, a slow movement on democracy to have success in Afghanistan. We just put the cross-cutting challenges, or like a general challenges, that not only it was related to the institutions, democratic institutions, but these challenges affect everything in Afghanistan: education, democratic institutions, economy of the country, everything it affects, like armed conflict and insecurity. Of course, after like 2003 and 4. Taliban started again fighting against the government of Afghanistan, and when there's war in a country, there's fighting, of course, things cannot happen properly. A lot of budget is required, every day people die, you cannot implement development projects in all part of the country, then some people suffer from not receiving the aid or the rule of law in all part of the country. So of course it affected the democratic institutions as well, that it affected the election, for example, and all of them. Corruption, of course, this was a very general issue. I don't want to touch too much on this. Illiteracy, still we have like more than 60%, like I think 60% illiterate population in Afghanistan. Ethnic diversity and conflict, as I explained already, also in the previous slide. Poor infrastructure, it means in Afghanistan we don't have infrastructure, access to villages, roads. We don't have these things. That's why there's poor communication between villages and the center of the cities. Lack of access to remote areas, which is, as said, poor infrastructure. Poverty, of course, there was, even economically, there was a huge gap between people. I think we didn't have middle class in Afghanistan. It was like in a good level people and then the poor people. And now it's, of course, much worse. As Jalali Saib said, it's like 97% food insecurity. Unbalanced development, like the development planning was not happening in all over Afghanistan in a balanced manner. Narcotics or cultivation and trafficking of narcotics in Afghanistan was a huge challenge that even it was fueling the armed groups and terrorist groups in Afghanistan. This was the source of their income. Social and traditional barriers, bureaucratic administrative system that we did have this problem in Afghanistan that till now we have this issue that we use some of the rules from 40 years ago, maybe from 50 years ago, that if you want to do something in Afghanistan, process your documents in the government department, it takes like weeks, months. Like one ordinary government staff needs to go from a city to the center of Afghanistan to process his documents. That's waste of resources, waste of time, everything. This chart shows the from 2004 to 2019 the participation of the people in the election, like how many people registered and how many participated. We have kind of like in 2004 it was 9.57 million people registered and 8.1 million participated. In 2009 we see a huge drop between the registration and participation. Then in 2014 the same, we see drop almost in both of them. And 2019, if we see 9.7 million registered and only 1.6 million participated. Even this 1.6 million is not, we cannot say accurate because there was a lot of fraud. This shows that people were not happy with the election. People were not really satisfied how the election was managed in Afghanistan and the result they were getting. The way forward, I just mentioned the same thing we listed at the beginning, the democratic institutions. So there's still, the solution for Afghanistan is the same institutions. We cannot say that Afghanistan does not deserve democracy. This is the Taliban mentality. Afghanistan, the way to bring sustainability in Afghanistan is democratic institutions, is the transparent election, a citizen-oriented governance in Afghanistan. That's what brings sustainable peace in Afghanistan. Education, we need education in all parts of the country. In each village of the country, we need education. That's the way we can bring sustainable peace for Afghanistan. Balanced relationship with neighboring countries. We cannot be enemy to any neighboring country, and we can be friends with all of them. That's the only way we have to proceed in the future. Regional cooperation, of course, as we said, neighboring countries in the regional countries and then the international community, they all need to come up on something for Afghanistan, that we need sustainability for this country. Nation building and diversity recognition. This is what in Afghanistan the political leaders need to focus on in the future. Of course, we are not supposed to remain with Taliban forever. After any dark night, we have a bright morning. Even if it's a winter night, which is very long, we have a day after that. And decentralization, that's what I was saying, that a government staff does not need to go to center for processing his documents. There should be some kind of decentralization, giving some authorities to the provinces, to the local authorities, that some small things could be managed at the local level. I think, yes. Yes, it's finished. Thank you very much.